Hello, how are you? Welcome again. So we've been going through the book of Genesis, and it's becoming, very interesting. And these lessons that we learn from the beginning of time, creation, they're amazing. Today we are in Genesis chapter 4. Very interesting story here. I remember when I was a kid, we used to learn about this. So let's go through this. Genesis chapter 4. Okay. Cain murders Abel. Verse 1. Now, the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. This comes after man has been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. They had sinned, so the serpent came, lied to Eve or tricked Eve, and Eve went out and made also his husband to fall into the same temptation of eating the fruit that God had said that they should not eat. And then God shows up like he used to. He used to come every evening to visit them. And so he comes that evening and he's looking for the man, and he says, where are you? And the guy says, I had you and I hid because I was naked. And so God asks him, who told you that you are naked? Then the man, is confused. And God says, did you eat from the garden that I told you not to eat from? And the man says, okay, the woman you gave me. So it's like he's blaming God for giving him a woman. So it's important that when you are praying for a husband or for a wife, you just remember that God stopped giving people husbands and wives because at this point he was blamed. And so now the Bible says he who finds a good wife finds a good thing. So the woman is yours to find, but pray that God will give you direction to find someone. So this comes after all that. And so the man is thrown out of the garden, both husband and wife. And the Lord puts a cherubim to protect and guard the garden. Very powerful. And so Adam most likely does not know what to do, where to go. This is all the life he had known. And this is all the things that he had only known the Garden of Eden. I mean, I don't think he knew there was any other place. And now, for the first time, we see in the Bible, husband and wife getting intimate. And then now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. This was the first child to be born to the first family. The first family, Adam and Eve. And now the first child was Cain. Very interesting guy. Then verse 2 next, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. Two people from the same womb who have two different career paths. One takes up the career of farming, tilling the land, and the other one takes the career of taking care of sheep. Cain began, most likely, in my thinking, Cain learned his art from Adam. I do not know, but maybe he learned from Adam. As a firstborn son, maybe Adam taught him and told him, you need to till the land, you need to be a man, because maybe that was a measure of a man. But then Abel comes and decides to take a different route and goes to take care of sheep. Okay, so verse 3. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. In the course of time. So some time passed. We are not told how much time, but now what we see is the first sacrificial system in the Bible. So let's read that whole verse again, that whole concept again, or that whole portion again. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought the first of his flock, their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lacking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it." Now, very interesting. Let's go portion by portion. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel for his part brought of the firstlings of the flock, their fat portions. Okay? So we see two people here again who are gifted differently. Cain goes to till the land. Abel goes to take care of sheep. And at some point in the course of time, they both decide to bring an offering to the Lord. Now look at the offering of Cain. He brought the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. There's no problem with that. But then, compared to Abel's offering, which was the first of his flock, and their fat portions, the Lord was more pleased with Abel. Why? Because Abel gave a much better offering than Cain. Abel gave the good portions that he would have otherwise kept to himself. But then Cain did not give as he had. It seems like Cain did not give out of his best. He gave just a few things here and there. The process of giving, when we talk about giving, so let me be very careful here, because I am not a prosperity gospel preacher. Therefore, I am not here to tell you to give your fat portions and your best portions and disregard everything else. But I'm seeing a trend here. I'm seeing something that God is attracted to. So whenever you are giving an offering, give something out of your abundance, not out of what you do not have. We usually give out of what we have. The difference between Cain and Abel's offering is not who gave what. It is the difference is that Cain and Abel gave out of the abundance of what he had, and Cain did not give out of the same abundance. I believe that Cain was successful. He was a successful farmer. And I believe that Abel was a successful shepherd. But when Cain brought an offering, he did not bring an offering to the level of his success. He brought an offering that was below the level or below a portion of his success. And Abel brought an offering that could match the level or below a portion of his success. And Abel brought an offering that could match $1,000,000, for example, $1 million. And you bring your offering and you say, I want to give, out of this 1 million shillings, I want to give 100 shillings. That is exactly what I'm saying. You are not giving out of abundance. You are giving out of contempt. It is almost as if you have contempt for the giving. But if you have 1 million shillings and you say, I'm going to give 50,000 or 100,000, then that is a portion that could match your abundance. We give out of abundance. And that is what Cain and Abel did. And that is why there is a difference between how God responds to these two people. Okay? But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard, the Bible says. He has no regard. And the question I have is, whether you're offering money, whether you're offering time, whatever it is that you're offering to God, is it enough that the Lord will have regard for it? When you say that you're giving God time, or you're giving God money, or you're giving God whatever it is that you're giving Him, is that portion of time proportionate to the amount of time that you have and that you give to other things? These are questions that we must ask ourselves. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. There are things you can do for God, and he has no regard for them because they are not significant enough. You're not doing them. Your motive is not right for you to do them. So God has no regard. You can even preach the gospel, and God has no regard for that preaching. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Now, Cain got angry because God favored Abel. The assumption I have is this, that maybe Cain had been offering offerings before Abel was of age. I do not know. I'm just thinking. And maybe Cain's offerings were consistently accepted. But then Abel comes and gives a better offering, and the Lord regards Abel's offering as a wonderful one. So then the Lord appears to Cain, which now this brings another whole concept. God had kicked out Adam and Eve, but he did not stop speaking to them. He may not have visited them as oftenly as he used to, but by this time we see Cain is in conversation with God. Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? The Lord is asking. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lacking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Now, if you do well, will you not be accepted? In other words, God is giving Cain a way out. I have rejected it, but that's not the end. If you do well, I will accept it. If you go and bring what you have and give me out of the abundance of what you have, I'm going to accept it. And everything will be okay with me, between me and you. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And I challenge you, my brothers and my sisters. If you do well with God, if you do well by God, will you not be accepted? Maybe you feel like you are rejected by God. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is knocking at the door. So this is a warning now that God is giving to Cain. It's like he's telling him, all right, my friend, you need to be very careful. There's a way out. If you do well, I'm going to accept your offering. But then if you go the other path, if you do not do well, there is sin that is at the door. See, there is always two ways in everything. There are always two options when we are serving God. There's the option of if you do well, you will be accepted. And then there's the option if you do not do well, sin is knocking at the door. Its desire is for you. In other words, sin is waiting to consume you, to destroy you, to destroy everything. It's like a cancer. Sin is waiting for you. So two paths. And what you have to check today, even in your own life, is to think to yourself, if I have two options, which one am I taking now? Am I angry because of God, because of the man of God, because God has refused to accept my offering, because God has decided to bless my brother and not to bless me? Because remember, these two guys are brothers. And sometimes the jealousy consumes us. When you see God blessing your brother and he's not blessing you. Or when you see God blessing this other person, but he's not blessing you. And sometimes you get angry at this other person and we address this other person instead of addressing God. When we see other people rise and shine and are doing great things than we are, most of the times we forget and we become angry, just like Cain. You see, when we read this Bible, we are so quick to blame Cain for what he did. But in truth, if we were at the same place at the same time as Cain was, we will probably have done the same thing that he did. And that is why I say, do not be quick to blame people. Okay? Are you the kind of a person who gets angry because the other person is doing very well? So Cain was told by God, its desire is for you. But then he's given another option, even in the second option. The first option is, if you do well, you will be accepted. The second option is, there is sin. If you do not do well, there is sin. But you must master it. And that is so profound. That is so profound, as the Lord is asking Cain, you must master it. It's almost as if he knows the direction. He knows the direction that Cain is going to take. And so he says, there is sin lacking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Okay? And whether you're watching me as a preacher, as a layman, whatever it is, you've got to know that whenever we take one of these two options, if we take the option of sin, we must master it. In other words, we have been given the ability to master sin, such that it does not master us. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Have you ever been at a place where you felt the desire to sin, the urge to sin? Its desire is for you, but you must master it. So God expects Cain to either do well or master the sin. Okay? And he expects us to either do well or master the sin. If we master it, we have done well. If we do well, we have done well. Okay? And so then the next verse says, Cain said to his brother Abel, let us go out to the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground, and now you are cast from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Now, this is the first murder we see in the Bible, or the first death in the beginning of humankind. The first death was Abel, the first blood, the first murder. I mean, like, the first death was among siblings. It was among brothers. And you know, sometimes when I look at these things, it is so sad that this is how it had to be. And today's main and biggest rivalries in the world are brothers. People who have grown together have killed each other. You see, this did not stop with Abel and Cain. When you look at the story of Rwanda, in 1994, the genocide in Rwanda, it was brothers against brothers. People who have grown up together, they share more than their differences. They share more things. In other words, they have every reason to come together. The reasons that separated them were less reasons than the reasons they had to stand together as brothers. And so they killed one another. Look at Kenya in 2007 and how brother rose against brother. We share so much in common as Kenyans. Yet, in moments of anger, in moments of jealousy, we do not see how much we share, but we see how much we are different. Look at the stories of, for example, United States, American Civil War, and how they killed each other, brother against brother, destroying one another. The first murder was brother killing brother. Very sad story. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up, and so he tricked him. Cain tricked Abel. Let's go to the field. And maybe when Abel wasn't looking, Cain hit him and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? So the Lord knew what Cain had done. He had warned him. And so he comes and says, where is your brother? And then the response of Cain is full of contempt and full of disrespect. He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? You see, that question, the kind of rhetoric that Cain is bringing out is about someone who doesn't care. It's like, you favored him, I've killed him. What can you do? Nothing. Am I his keeper? No, I'm not his keeper. Now the Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cast from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So the blood cried to the heavens. The blood cried to God. Abel's blood was crying for vengeance. Vengeance. And the Lord had come and to do this. And then he says, verse 12, when you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. This is the curse of Cain. Okay? Remember, the ground had already been cast when Adam fell. But it seems, and as I said earlier, it seemed that Cain was blessed. His lands were blessed. But now he has shed blood. And the Lord has cast the ground again for the sake or because of Cain. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer of the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer of the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me. Look, guys, how is this even possible? That Cain has been dwelling in the face of God, dwelling and having fellowship with God, being warned by God that sin is at the door, and still go on and commit this sin. I see a lot of familiarity between Cain, from Cain to God. I think Cain was very familiar with God, that he no longer cared about what God thought. He no longer cared about what God said. He no longer cared about what God said about himself, about his life. I don't care. And there's a problem today that there are many of us. Be careful that you do not become familiar with God. I'm not talking about men of God. I'm not talking about prophets. I'm not talking about apostles. I'm not talking about these people. I am talking about God himself. Be careful that you do not become familiar with him such that you are not able to listen to his instructions or to obey him when he speaks. Today you have hidden. So now he begins to negotiate for his punishment. He begins to say, no, this is too much for me. You know, this kind of attitude is simply not acceptable. Then the Lord said to him, not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer sevenfold vengeance. And the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Now, many people ask me, Cain had a mark and God said that he will not die. But God did not say that Cain will not die. He said that Cain will not be killed. You see, we are constantly afraid of the things that we are doing. We are constantly afraid of our sins coming to catch up with us. The greatest fear that Cain had was to be killed because he had killed. The next question that people ask me is, were there other people in the world that Cain was afraid of? And I say, no, there were no other people in the world, but Cain was afraid that he may not be, that someone may kill him. Why? Because the principle of multiplication was still going on, as we look at in the next verse. Verse 17, Cain knew his wife. So the question is, where did he get his wife from? Okay, he's been kicked out, he's been thrown away from the throne of God, from the face of God, and now he's settled in the land of Nod. And he says, the Bible says he knew his wife. He must have married one of his sisters. And you see, when we say that, we are talking about a time before the law. Incest was not incest until the law came into being. And the law came in the book of Exodus. When you study Exodus and you study Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, okay, so when you study Leviticus, you see that God now rejects incest. But at that time, it was okay. So Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and named it Enoch after his son Enoch. Cain built a city. My goodness. And he named it Enoch. To Enoch was born, so now let's read the generations and then we finish up. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mehujael, and Mehujael the father of Methushael, and Methushael the father of Lamech. Now then we pause. Lamech took 2 wives. The name of the one was Adah. The name of the other was Zillah. Adah bore Jabal. He was the ancestor of those who live in tents and have livestock. So we see now the beginning of civilizations. Now people living in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jobal. He was the ancestor of all those who play the lyre and pipe. The musicians are here now. The other part says Zillah bore Tabal Cain, who made all kinds of bronze and iron tools. And now these are the traders, okay? The sister of Tabal Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, truly Lamech 70-fold. Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son, and named him Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me another child instead of Abel, because Cain killed him. To Seth also a son was born, and he was named Enosh. At that time, people began to invoke the name of the Lord. At that time, people returned to God. Okay? And so these are the interesting verses. This is Genesis chapter 4. God bless you.